What is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host. Joining me, as always, is my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing?
Doing very well. Happy to be talking about some actual news and potential news and all that sort of good stuff. How are you, Steven?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a good week for us. It's been a good week for the Chargers so far. So I'm gonna, well, I guess on certain fronts at least, which we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about some of the not so good stuff for the Chargers. So a ton to dive in today. This year we weren't able to do live shows every single day of free agency, so we've got a lot of it to dissect today. Thankfully, the Chargers not as active as last year from our standpoint. Last year we would have this would probably be a 2.5 hour show. With all the moves that they were making last year. So a ton to dive in today, and we will be able to figure out where we stand on a lot of different fronts. So first and foremost, have to start with the Austin Ekeler news. As of yet, he has not been traded, despite the comment here in the live chat. So that's the situation, though, for Austin Ekeler. He has been granted permission by the Chargers to seek out a trade. Ian Rappaport reported on yesterday, that this is mostly a strategy to seek out an extension, and he's more than happy to stay in Los Angeles. You had heard privately back in February that the Austin Ekeler camp would seek out an extension, and that the team was open to, having that kind of conversation. So things kind of escalated quickly on Monday, and then again on Tuesday when it became official that the Chargers were going to give him permission to seek out a trade. And this is where we're at. The running back market has tanked. Jamal Williams was very far apart with the Lions. Austin Ekeler reportedly very far apart with the Chargers. And now, Jamal Williams is signing for $4 million per year. David Montgomery, $6 million per year. So it's not a very kind running back market at this current moment. So Tyler, what are your thoughts on all of this? And obviously, feel free to share what you can, based off of what you've heard, over the last month or so.
Yeah. So overall, I think Steve and I were messaging on Sunday, like, man, I can't wait for these certain things to happen.
Yeah.
When Monday rolled around and he requested a trade, that was a surprise, or at least requested to have permission to speak about a trade. So on February 9th, I learned that Austin Ekeler's camp and Austin Ekeler and the Chargers were going to engage in these extension talks. The sentiment I heard was that Ekeler was, he wanted to finish out his career here. Not that this was some 5 or 7 year deal, but this is probably his last big contract, and it will be probably. Because that was off the record what we heard in February 9th, we couldn't exactly share that out loud with everyone. But I think, as many of you have seen with the show, it's very much a show don't tell sort of thing. So we couldn't report it out loud. But anyone watching knows that we've been discussing and simulating this extension for at least a month now, when we started doing our first mock and then the mock that we did on Sunday. That's why we keep discussing it. Ultimately, as it's very obvious, Ekeler wants a pay raise, obviously. What I have learned, and I have to dance around specifics here, is that this is not like a greedy player, greedy agency contract sort of thing. They're not looking for a market resetting kind of deal. Nothing that seems to be I'm sure they would love to get paid that, but they're not like demanding something within the top 5. I don't think this is anything like that. And I know of the target goal, there's a certain cutoff that they are looking to hit above. And frankly, if you look at running back contracts, you might be able to guess what that is. And I believe that number is genuinely fair for the production that he gives. And technically, I do still think that the Chargers could pay it or something close to it. But I understand why they won't. I understand why they're allowing him to potentially discuss trades with other teams. He's as productive as any back in the league. He's more productive than most backs in the league. But it's the running back position that comes down to that question of sustainability. And he's past that running back snap threshold. We thought in the early parts of the season he was looking a bit rough, but things got better from there. I know people will point to the postseason, but frankly, from my perspective, most of what happens in the rushing game is really more of a product of the offensive line and the scheme and the blocking, not necessarily the running back, which is also why you might be able to feel like Ekeler
Yeah.
is somewhat expendable because you feel better about the scheme in the line. So I get why this could be head for a split. But I did not hear what you just mentioned, what Ian Rappaport said about this being a potential, tactic, if you will. And that doesn't surprise me. And, ultimately, I could see it working. But I think both sides will kind of meet in the middle because, he's trying to hit this deal, maybe work a trade or something or work the contract. But the market's not been kind. Like you said, $6 million APY for two of the better backs in the market, Montgomery and Williams. Miles Sanders, I don't know. We have the numbers yet. He got a 4-year deal. I don't know what that worth is. Samaje Perine, 3.75. Mostert and Wilson got it, $3 million and $2.8 million. The tagged players, like the big guys on the market, but they all got tagged, and they got 10.1 million on that tag. The Cowboys are either just cut Zeke or are pending cutting Zeke or whatever. The Titans want to move on from Henry. Fournette was cut. Like, this market stinks. So if you're like Ekeler, like both sides, I understand why they want what they want.
Yeah.
But I also do think that both sides could work this out because I do think the fit is still there. The Chargers want Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler wanted to retire here. I don't think the number that they're looking for is so outrageous. So I do think this still can get done. I do think that Austin Ekeler can return back to the Chargers, but all it takes is one cap-free contender, and it's over. Like, someone's going to offer a fourth and a third or something, whatever, a fourth or a third. And really, I feel like it's a third is like a dream scenario for a trade. But some team that have with some money that's a contender, that's like, okay, we'll pay that for 2 years, give them a fourth, all good. Now that's all it takes. So I do think the Chargers and Austin Ekeler can still get this done, but there are teams out there that can pay more. It's just a question of will they?
Yeah, I mean, from Austin Eckler's side, I think this makes all the sense in the world, right? Like, I think you are a player who's produced at an elite level, and granted, with these kind of contracts, you're also taking into consideration what you're going to be, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, this player produced at an elite level, like we have to pay him at that rate. You're also trying to bake in, like, what is this guy going to look like over the course of this contract? So if you're Austin Ekeler, who has produced at an elite level, right? Like, we're talking about 40 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, and we're talking about, breaking the receiving record and over 800 yards rushing each of the last 2 years. And, we've seen what the Chargers offense has looked like without him, in 2020 when they were not able to run the football at all. We've seen them not be able to find an RB2 at any point over the last 3 seasons consistently. Obviously, Joshua Kelly's injury certainly plays into that figure, right? But, you have zero guaranteed money on this upcoming contract, and you're going to turn 28 next month in May. Like, what incentive do you have to play on this existing deal? There isn't one, right? Like, you have given everything to the Chargers that they possibly could have asked for. And, this was a great contract for him, obviously, as a former undrafted free agent. But now you're trying to get paid. And like you said, I don't think he's trying to reset the market. I think that'd be kind of, ridiculous and very short-sighted on his part. And, you've heard that is not going to be the case. So I think he's trying to get a fair payday while also getting this year's contract fully guaranteed, or at least partially guaranteed, because right now you have zero guaranteed money. If he gets hurt, then he does not get paid, right? And he's a running back. Like, it makes all the sense in the world why this is the way that you were trying to do things if you're Austin Ekeler and his camp. I think it also makes sense for the Chargers. And, this is a smart business tactic. It sucks that this is part of the NFL, right? Like, we all love Austin Ekeler. I think he's one of the better players in the league. I think he's one of the better guys in the league. We've had him on the show. He was a great interview. I have his jersey. He was the first jersey I bought, when the Chargers rebranded. So we all love Austin Ekeler, and this is the unfortunate part of the NFL. But if you're the Chargers, this is exactly what you do. You have contract negotiations. They don't go as the way that you think, especially as a cap-strapped team, like we've talked about several times. And you say to Austin Ekeler, okay, like, go do your research. go figure out what your value is around the league, and we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work out, great. We'll trade you. We'll get a pick. We'll draft somebody, sign somebody. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We can certainly talk about that. But again, if you're the Chargers, like, this is exactly what you want to do. You offered him a contract extension. It didn't go super well. You're far apart. Okay, Austin, go see what your value is around the league, and then we'll talk again. And so, it sucks that it got to this point, but, I think this is smart business from Ekeler's side. And I think it's smart business from the Chargers side of things too.
Yeah, it really is smart business from both sides. It was great for both sides initially, right? Because when the numbers came out for Austin Ekeler's contract, yeah, there was a bit of projection. Like, I didn't see him as a 40 touchdowns in 2 years kind of guy,
right?
With as much as he was able to do the last 2 years. But like, even for that, the money that he had then was an extreme discount, and now it's still quite a discount. And the Chargers were happy to make it work. Austin Ekeler, I mean, this guy was again leading, white river rafting or whatever, whitewater rafting tours at one point. Like, that was his job.
Yeah.
And now, hey, $6 million APY, no problem. That's better than the tip money you get being a tour guide. So, it was a great deal for both sides. It is still a great deal for this season, I think. But again, Austin Ekeler, looking at that 2024, like, you pushed. Okay, so let me do the math. You've pushed $142 million to 4 players in 2024.
Yeah,
I have 0 guaranteed money next year. Like, I wonder who's going to get cut first to make room and make things work. Like, yeah, okay, maybe one of the receivers and edge players, but hello, the guy with 0 guaranteed money who's going to be 29 or even 30, and maybe another 300 touches, another 20 touchdowns. Like, at some point, like, Ekeler is going to be quote unquote over the hill. Like, he's going to hit a wall. It could be, like, it actually could be this year. It wouldn't surprise me. I know no one's going to like me bringing it up, but Arjun did reference early in the year, statistically, some of the struggles that Austin Ekeler was having. And even the best of what Ekeler could do, if you looked at when plays were not perfectly blocked, he was, on those plays, one of the worst running backs in the league in rushing yards over expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the Chargers are looking at that and going, okay, like, if things aren't perfect for you, you're not very good. No offense. Now, again, Ekeler was fantastic last year. I think I had him 4th or 5th on my top 10. But I think the Chargers are smart enough to look at that and go, I just don't think we can meet you where you want to. And I think that they are anticipating potentially the drop off to hit this year. So if they don't want, if Ekeler wants $3 million more, $4 million more, whatever it ends up being, I get it why the Chargers would pass on that.
Yeah, I would as well. And I think, a lot of people are penciling Austin Ekeler into a box that I don't think he necessarily belongs to, because I do think that his game can age very well. I mean, he's an elite pass protector. He's an elite receiver out of the backfield. He can still give you a lot of value. And, the Chargers haven't really been able to put him out in the slot very often recently, or flex him out wide, because they haven't had other running backs who can pass protect. That's the issue with, like, not having a consistent running back too, is that you kind of limit what Austin Ekeler can do as a player. But I mean, there was a stretch of the year this past season where he was wide receiver 1. Like, he was getting 11, 12 targets a game. I mean, we all remember what that looked like against the 49ers, and that stretch of games where Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were either banged up or not on the field. And Austin Ekeler had 107 receptions this year. So I do think that Ekeler's game can age at a higher level, right? But I do think that this is what the running back market is reflecting. And Alex pointed this out on Twitter.
Yes, Morgan Fox is back.
Oh, shit. Let's go.
Yeah, so Morgan Fox.
All right.
Agent David Cantor going back to Cali. Congratulations to Morgan Fox on agreeing to terms and re-sign with the Chargers. Okay, so Morgan Fox is back.
Let's go.
I'm going to be 3 for 3 on these big 3.
Yes. Hey, 2 years in a row, we got a defensive tackle signing live on the show.
Yeah, if you need a defensive tackle to be signed, man, we'll jump on. Don't worry. Hey, it happened on the show. All right, Morgan Fox is back. Okay, I can pull it up on the screen real quick. And there's not much to add right now, but I can pull it up so people can, celebrate and such. Let me go to Chrome tab.
Okay.
Morgan Fox is back. And
Let's
yes, as
go.
Arjun says, let's see the money. I think that so I had a lot more to say about Morgan Fox, but he's back. So that's great. That saves you guys 5 minutes of listening to me ramble on. I mean, it came down to what's his name? Coach Ed was on Twitter at one point going, "Hey, listen, stop playing. Pay this dude." I think Steven, you had heard and shared in the Discord that they were kind of lowballing him. To me, it just felt like proper negotiation. You don't start at the top. It's not what you deserve; it's what you negotiate. And Morgan Fox, you got to negotiate down to a certain point and meet in the middle. Yeah, great. Morgan Fox is back with the Chargers. I thought him and Trey Pipkins were the two most irreplaceable players, and they've retained two of their most irreplaceable players, in my opinion. So, okay, we'll see. Those are my notifications. I have March Mammal Madness on my notifications.
Ian Rappaport just said it's a 2-year deal for Morgan Fox.
Interesting. So I'm sure Arjun can make a guess in the chat. So Arjun had him at what, or not Arjun? Arjun and Brad had him at 2 years, 5.5 or something.
Yeah. So initially, Brad's prediction for Morgan Fox was 2 years, $11 million. Mm-hmm. And then I think after the defensive tackle boom, he bumped it up to 6.25, which would be in this instance 12.5 million. Is that correct? Basic quick math.
Sure. Everyone's just watching me go through my retweets. I'm just trying to find where I said that they should get this done, because they really should have.
They really should have. Yeah, this is live television, folks. Arjun said in the chat that he had him 2 years, $9 million total.
Probably exceeds that.
No, I think that would exceed that. I don't think it's going to be the $8 to $10 million that Coach Ed was talking about.
We'll find out,
and we'll see here shortly. Maybe that is the case, but I mean, the Chargers, nice live tweeting from the screen.
Yeah, I gotta avoid doing my DM. I gotta avoid staying away from that. But okay, all right. You know what? Everyone's seen too much. I'm out of here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, let's put that shit away. But yes, this is fantastic news. The Chargers, as of now, are letting Braden Fehoko test the market. Austin Johnson is injured with a very serious injury, and I think just barely is really starting to test his physical ability in terms of his knee. I haven't really seen an update on Otito Ogbonia, but he's also injured with the same injury that JC Jackson had. So currently healthy on the roster was Sebastian Joseph Day and Christopher Hinton. That was it. And I think they like Chris Hinton, and I think he showed some interesting flashes down the stretch. I think that he could be kind of like what they had for Braden Fehoko, like that kind of role where it's like, okay, you're DT6, maybe you make a roster. If not, you're a practice squad guy and you're the first, practice squad elevation. So I do think they like Chris Hinton, but that was it, right? That was Sebastian Joseph Day and Christopher Hinton that were healthy and on the roster. So this was a big need for the Chargers, and we'll see what the money comes in. I'm hoping we get some clarity here, but Morgan Fox had an outstanding season last year, and I know that he's getting paid as a pass rusher, but I said this throughout the end of the season. I thought that his work against the run was really catching up to what he was doing as a pass rusher as well. So he's ideally somebody that you just kind of focus in on as a pass rusher, but I do think he is a bit underrated as a run defender as well. So this is great news. The Chargers didn't really have a choice here. I thought that if they struck out with Morgan Fox, maybe we're talking about like a 1 year, $4 million, $5 million deal for like Shelby Harris, maybe a 1 year, $3 million deal for like Ashawn Robinson, who I mentioned, but getting Morgan Fox back, I think, is huge.
It is so huge. This just ensures, and Pipkins back as well, that you can really focus on potentially the strength of the draft, which is edge rusher.
There you go,
Lordy. This is great. I was looking at running through simulations. I just for fun, I had them taking a defensive tackle in round 1 in a simulation recently. And it just that might have been where they had to go. but they don't have to now because of Morgan Fox. I'm really curious what these numbers are. The Chargers, and I've guessed as much, like they had no choice. There was nothing, like you said, their players were either hurt or they're gone or they're hitting the market or whatever. It was literally just Sebastian Joseph Day.
Yep.
And now I would sort of understand if they then, okay, this didn't work. Let's get Robinson and, whatever, let's say Brockers or something. But it's just like not the same. Too. This is great. This is fantastic. Again, a player that technically wasn't the starter, but rolled into 40 pressures and 6 sacks to end the year. Will he hit that? I hope so. He'll be paid a lot more to hit those numbers again.
Yeah.
But this system favors him. This line favors him. He's an excellent player. People kind of want to pigeonhole him as a sort of rotational guy. Maybe he's not, a perfect every down elite player, but he's exactly what the Chargers need. This is an all-in year, and I didn't want to see how they'd replace a guy with 40 pressures and 6 sacks. Look at the draft last year. The leader, it might be wishy-washy on PFF because of like DN versus defensive tackle, but the leader in pressures last year for a rookie was 17, and which is not great.
This rookie class, this incoming draft class sucks. It is so bad.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, so I don't know, but yeah,
I was probably a little too passionate. I'm sorry. It's
not. We'll get to it. I'm so excited to watch that class. Guess what we're breaking down next? Defensive tackles. I can't wait. Thanks for that endorsement. I'm so excited.
No, that was a tad dramatic on my part.
It's all good. But I mean, listen, like again, 17 pressures, the leader last year. The year before that was Barmore, and that was the only player to be over 40 pressures that year as a rookie. Like the odds of Tom Telesco, probably not in the first round, finding somebody else who is the one guy every 2 years who hits over 40 pressures, the odds are so slim. Like raise your hand if you thought Tom Telesco was going to be able to find that player, and probably not even in the first round. Wouldn't have been me raising my hand, but now it's Morgan Fox time. I can't wait to see what these numbers are. Frankly, if they overpaid relative to Arjun's expectations and contract, fine. But we'll see what this quote unquote, overpay might be. I wouldn't be surprised if they spent a little more to make sure he stayed.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would have loved to have seen him just be resigned before the market hit, but hey, I'm happy. Trey Pipkins, Morgan Fox, the two priorities in my opinion, both back. I'm stoked.
Yeah, we'll talk about Trey here in a second, but we'll see what happens with the pass rush, right? But like the whole point of signing Morgan Fox last year was, they needed somebody who could beat one-on-ones because the edge rushers were getting double teamed, right? Like, this is a team for the Chargers who, when Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are healthy, they're going to command a ton of attention, right? Whether that's chips, whether that's double teams. And we saw it last year where anybody not named Morgan Fox last year was not winning one-on-one opportunities until the end for Kyle Van Noy. Kyle Van Noy obviously came on strong. So Morgan Fox coming back is huge for the pass rush. They're able to have a pass rushing opportunity because it's like, when I suggest A'Shawn Robinson, right? Like you're talking about A'Shawn, who is not a great pass rusher. Sebastian Joseph Day, not a good pass rusher. Austin Johnson, not a very good pass rusher. So it's like those guys, essentially, you'd be asking them to like push the pocket and then, letting Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa work. But now with Morgan Fox, you have somebody who can, be very disruptive, along the interior. So, Coach Ed has been pounding the table that, he was more productive last year than a lot of these guys who signed for, $16-17 million. Like Zach Allen signed with the Seahawks for, I think, $14.5 million. And Morgan Fox had more pressures, had a higher pass rush win rate, and Morgan Fox, we'll see what happens here. But he's definitely not signing for $14 million per year. So, this is a great sign for the Chargers that they're bringing him back. And I do think that letting him kind of test the market probably was best for them. I think, not to say that he's like a schematic limitation player, because I do think he'd go be successful elsewhere, but his best seasons have been with Brandon Staley as defensive coordinator. So I do think that is something that other teams certainly weigh into.
Yeah, and then the reverse, Morgan Fox weighing the market is him going, okay, I've tried things with the Rams before Brandon Staley. I went to the Panthers, and I mean, we heard as soon as they signed Morgan Fox that the fit with the Panthers was awful. They did not know how to use
Yeah.
him. He was productive,
He's
but
playing
they
on the
weren't.
edge a ton for Carolina.
Yeah, and I think he did have some production, but it wasn't the same. And everything just in 2020 and in 2022, what's the obvious thing here? It's Brandon Staley. And again, like credit to Brandon Staley for that, for letting Morgan Fox have this career year in this scheme, even though he wasn't technically like a starter early on. But when they made him that focal point and he had to become one, he thrived.
Yep.
So this scheme was at least good for Morgan Fox. And I think if Morgan Fox is looking at the market, if this is a 2-year deal, I'm willing to bet there's an out in 2024 because that's just kind of the way things have been. And if you have another really, really great season, hey, your best shot at the next contract is staying with this team. If every other team was going to give you, $1 million more APY or something, and that's kind of it, screw it. Take that maybe a slight discount, stay with this team, and hit the market again when you've shown like 2 years in a row now 40 pressure, 45 pressure seasons, and then really go cash in with some teams. So this works out. I'm stoked. I can't wait to see what these contract details are. I'm bummed it's not out yet. Come on.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about it coming out live when we're on the show. Have to correct myself. Zach Allen did sign with the Broncos, not with the Seahawks. Draymond Jones was the one who signed with the Seahawks. So my mistake there. But a lot of money being thrown around with the defensive tackle market recently, and I think this makes sense. I will say, I do think the Chargers do have to find a pass rusher of the future. Again, this is not a starter. Find a starter draft class for the Chargers incoming, except maybe at linebacker, like an immediate starter. But they have to find a future starting interior defensive tackle desperately in this draft. Definitely not in the first 3 rounds. I think that should be spent elsewhere, but they should definitely look at that market. So great news on the Morgan Fox front. We obviously debated back and forth this season, which Chargers internal free agents were the priority. Heading into the process, we had heard that it was going to be Trey Pipkins and / his replacement, and then Drew Tranquill / his replacement. So those were the top 2 priorities from the Chargers. And, obviously re-signing Trey Pipkins, we'll talk about Trey now. So Trey gets a 3-year, 21.7, is it 21.75 or 21.25? I forget.
All I know is Arjun was off by $250,000. That's all I remember.
So I think that means 7.5 then. I forget. Anyways, so it's a 3-year, $21 million deal basically for Trey Pipkins to come back to the Chargers. This is, again, in my opinion, was the top priority for the Chargers. 20.75 officially. Thank you, DJ Bling. I think that's how you say that. I don't know. Anyways, so Trey Pipkins back with the Chargers on a 3-year deal. I think this is great news again for the Chargers. I was pounding the table all off season long, which is crazy to talk about, right? If you had told me at this time a year ago that I'd be pounding the table for a Trey Pipkins extension, I would have said you were crazy. So, Trey solidifying the right side of the offensive line along with Zion Johnson. I think people really underrate how important continuity is along the offensive line. And, Zion didn't really have much of that last year. Trey wasn't super healthy. Corey missed some games. And now, theoretically, potentially, you have Zion and Trey again, solidifying that front for the next 3 years. We'll see if Trey plays the duration of that contract. So, the Chargers have all 5 starters locked up for the short-term future. You tweeted out the cost of the Chargers offensive line. And, it's a very affordable, efficient offensive line that I think really has a very, very high ceiling. So there is some uncertainty about Corey Linsley, right? But, for like the first time in my life, this is, that for the next 2 years, the Chargers will have the whole right side of the offensive line set, left side of the offensive line set with Rashawn Slater and Jamari Sawyer. And the future of this unit, I think, is incredibly bright. Like, I think if this goes well, we could be talking about, a top 6 or 7 offensive line in the league for the Chargers, which is huge. And I know some people will point out they weren't that great last year. They had some struggles, but Rashawn Slater was out. Corey Linsley missing games. Trey Pipkins missing games. Matt Filer obviously regressed and is now cut. So this unit I feel incredibly good about. You have all 5 spots solidified for the next 2 years. And beyond that, we'll see what happens with Corey Linsley. But this unit has an incredibly bright future. And now you just have to go find depth, right? Like, this is a great spot to be in. You look at teams who have elite offensive lines consistently, that continuity is huge. Whether you look at the Eagles and how they've been able to, maintain all 5 starters, or at least 4 starters. You look at what the Buccaneers have had recently. You look at what the Browns have had over the past few years. Like, maintaining continuity is so important. And now the Chargers have that for the short term and the long term future with this deal with Trey Pipkins.
Yeah, the right side of the line was clearly infinitely better with Trey Pipkins and Zion Johnson starting, and obviously Corey Linsley as well. Like, the 2 big runs we've seen from Austin Ekeler were off that right side. When the Browns couldn't stop them, they went to the right. When the Texans couldn't stop them, they were going to the right. Not that those are great defenses, but like, they were clearly significantly better to the right side. And obviously, with Matt Filer gone, Jamari Salyer in, Rashawn Slater back. I mean, this is the best I felt about the Chargers offensive line easily of the Tom Telesco era. And frankly, you could say in a decade, 2 decades, like, I've loved the Chargers offensive line, in 06 in those great years. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was the last time, but it's been a while.
It's been a long time, man.
It's been a long time. But Trey Pipkins, you got to say it. I was wrong. If you thought that he wasn't going to be better last year, you're fooling yourself, because he was working with Duke Manyweather. So there was a version of him that was going to be better. But he, watching him in training camp after the 3rd sack in a row he gave up to Micah Parsons, I was going, I don't know how this is going to go this year. But I guess that's Micah Parsons, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this is definitely a teaching moment, honestly, for all of us fans, and certainly for myself, because do you want to wait 4 years for a player to develop? No, that's not typically what you'd like to do, but he did develop, and that is a credit to him, to the Chargers, to them finding this right, fit and a blend of offensive line coaches, Duke Manyweather, obviously. This is awesome, and this is a really, really great story. I don't want to use this as the norm moving forward. Like, okay, year 4, he's definitely going to develop. Like, that's not the norm I'd like to set.
Yeah.
But that is still there. That we've had a lot of teachable moments the last few years, really, in the Brandon Staley regime. And I think this is one of them. Trey Pipkins, good for you. Good for him. Good for the Chargers. I think this is excellent. I have nothing really else to say. To me, it was, him and Fox were priorities 1 and 2. They got both done yesterday and today. I mean, I couldn't be happier. I can't believe that this is the first year of Telesco's entire career that 2 players from the same draft have been brought back. And those 2 players are Trey Pipkins and Easton Stick. Never, I would have lost so much money. If you had told me that, I would have reported you and drug tested you, everything. Like, you're an idiot if you told me that a year ago. You told me that 6 months ago, I'd tell you you're an idiot. But here we are. And I mean, okay, congratulations to Easton Stick. First off, congratulations. But seriously, congratulations to Trey Pipkins.
Yeah, 100%. I think circumstances obviously matter. Trey Pipkins drafted as a project offensive tackle, and it's not his fault that the Chargers had such poor depth that he had to play significant snaps as a rookie. And I think the second year struggles are certainly justified to talk about when Storm Norton replaces you. I think that is an issue, right? But I think it is important to remember context of players that are drafted and how the team looks at them, right? Like, I think we'll learn about their process in terms of drafting projects a lot with JT Woods. Like, what happens with JT Woods going forward? If you're drafting a player who you think can be an immediate contributor and they aren't, I think that's a different conversation. So, Trey taking a bit to develop, I think is certainly, it's a great story. I think it's part of what makes the NFL truly special. And I was 100% wrong. And I think a lot of my frustration at this time last year of how the Chargers handled the offensive tackle situation was that they were banking on Trey's development and banking on Storm Norton's development, which obviously did not go well on that front. And then you obviously have to rely on Jamari Salyer to save your season at left tackle when Rashawn Slater goes down. So, I'm so glad that Trey, developed into the kind of player that he did last year. And, people who have been critical of the potential of re-signing of Trey Pipkins will point out, like, he's got a low PFF run blocking grade and his pass blocking grade isn't great. PFF does some great things, but if you really sit down and watch film of how Trey played, I think you would agree that Trey was severely undergraded as a run blocker. I think the work that he and Zion Johnson were doing last year was phenomenal when Trey was healthy in the run game. And like you said earlier, those two were the linchpins of the run game, and so for them not to use it in the playoff game is truly something else. But Trey, I think, has come a very long way. I think he's a perfect fit for what Kellen Moore is going to want to do in the run game, because Kellen Moore is going to want to do a lot of outside zone stuff. He's going to want to get his offensive tackles out in the move. I think that was one of my favorite things watching the Dallas offense after that hiring became official, was how much he got, the offensive tackles out in space, whether that was Tyron Smith, whether that was Jason Peters, whether that was, I forget his name, the kid from Tulsa, Tyler Smith, excuse me. They were out in space and they were pulling out and they were being able to get out to the second level and use them in the counter game, use them in various ways to get them out in space. And I think now with Rashawn Slater and Trey Pipkins, you have a very, very high potential for the run game with those two back in tow. So very excited for Trey. I think he deserves this. He earned it. He was 19th in the league of offensive tackles and pass blocking efficiency rating. And again, if you really watch the film, people told me all throughout the season, like, oh, Jamari's better. And I think Jamari, again, saved the season. But if you really watch the film, Trey was the tackle they were leaving on an island in pass blocking situations, and they were sending help towards Jamari pretty consistently. So, they trusted Trey to be on an island, and the fact that that is a true statement from 2 years ago is pretty crazy. So, Trey deserves it, man. This is a story of a ton of hard work and dedication being up into working into his career, right? Because if he doesn't go down and work with Duke Manyweather, if he doesn't start taking his fitness at a higher level, he's probably out of the league after this season. As a third round pick from a small school who doesn't have that high profile, if he did not play this past season and play well, I mean, you're talking about somebody who's already retiring. This is what he did with Duke Manyweather, and the work ethic that he showed the past 2 years truly saved his career and changed his career.
Yeah, beautifully said there. It really did. I don't think he would have, who would have guessed? I mean, I don't think he would have said, hey, in 6 months or whatever, I'm making $7.25 million a year. And
life-changing money, man.
Absolutely life-changing money. And not because he was overpaid. He legitimately deserved it. Heck, they probably could have technically paid more. This came in right at what Arjun was expecting, but there's some tackles out there getting a lot more. I know Andrew Wiley got more. I don't remember how much more, but he wasn't better than Trey Pipkins this past year.
Wiley was 3 years, 24, so he was 8 APY.
Yeah, and Wiley, he has the snaps in his career, but he was not the same tackle that Pipkins was, unless you're just honing in and focusing on the playoffs. So yeah, awesome for Trey Pipkins. I will definitely consider this moving forward. Every time I say that, it's not going to happen. And honestly, this is a way that I think you can look. Not that I want it to take this long, but you can look at someone like a JT Woods. If they go out and sign John Johnson, which if you've seen Sebastian Joseph Day's tweet, it sounds like he really wants that to happen. But if JT Woods is not a starter next year, you hope that they find themselves a Duke Manyweather and that JT Woods can, be better and be that starter in year 3, year 4 or something. So, really, really interesting situation.
Yeah. Ideally, you don't spend so many third round picks on projects going forward, but I think an underrated storyline here too is what the Chargers have done, from an offensive staff standpoint. And I think particularly Sean Surratt deserves a shout out for, his role in developing these guys and being able to work them and figure out how to flex this out and get Jamari Salyer ready at 2 different positions and get Trey ready at different positions.
Absolutely.
You're flipping Zion Johnson's side. So, Sean Surratt, obviously, with Frank Smith and now with Brendan Nugent, he's kind of been that constant. So Obviously Ode Ibushi, when he came on the show, talked very glowingly about Sean Surratt. I think Trey Pipkins is another case study for him to as well. So, all right, so we'll shift here to the Eric Kendricks signing. Obviously, Drew Tranquill, you can pretty much, if you haven't already, unfortunately, there's just no chance that the Chargers are able to afford him at this point.
Yeah.
The linebacker market has kind of slowed down a little bit. We talked about on Sunday, the Quincy Williams contract really affecting the Chargers in that regard. And initially that was the case, right? We saw Okereke signing with the Giants with the high number, Tremaine Edmonds getting a very high number with the Bears, and some other linebacker signings as well. Now that linebacker market has kind of died down a little bit. The Levante David gets $7 million APY, Kaiser White gets $4 million, Leighton Vander Esch $4.5 million. So we'll see ultimately what happens with Drew Tranquill, but I think once they figured out that they were not able to come to terms with Drew Tranquill and his return, they pivoted to that veteran market, obviously choosing to sign Eric Kendricks, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, to a 2-year, $13.75 million deal, which is essentially $6.5 million per year. So Kendricks now presumably taking over that spot from Drew Tranquill. Alex pointing out earlier today about the green dot situation. Eric Kendricks has called plays his entire career for the Vikings for different defensive coordinators. So that's something there. Has been very praised for his leadership as well. So I think all in all, going from Drew Tranquill to Eric Kendricks, that's a pretty nice consolation prize, in my opinion. There are certain things that we can get into, but I'm excited about Eric Kendricks. I don't think this is a drastic upgrade from Drew Tranquill, but I think, again, this is a nice pivot point. And Daniel Popper also pointing out that Eric Kendricks will not count against the compensatory pick formula because he was a cut player from the Vikings.
Yeah, going as far as comp picks goes, although they brought back Morgan Fox, they brought back Trey Pipkins, but they're headed for some decent comp picks next year, so that's good. I think my reaction to the Kendricks signing is going to come down to the contract that Drew Tranquill gets. If it's off by a little bit, like whatever, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but we'll see. Kendricks is older. He's played 2,100 whatever it is snaps the last 2 seasons. But I'm not worried about a guy coming off an ACL or something nasty, so that's good. I think it really comes down to 3-ish things. One's that Kendricks is I think he's more likely to hit his expectations. Tranquill could too. I'm not saying Tranquill's going to go be a bad linebacker or a bust somewhere, but he's Kendricks has played he's never played fewer than 750 snaps in a season his entire career, and this is the first time that Drew Tranquill has done that. So even if you get about the same as Tranquill played last year, you at least you know what you're getting, I think, and that's important. I think he'll hit similar production. You've said a couple times on Twitter, if you're looking at coverage here, run defense here, blitzing here, it's kind of a wash between the two. So I think you're going to get just similar production, maybe slightly less production, but you're hoping you get that at a discount. Again, I'm kind of waiting for this contract because if Tranquill goes and gets, again, we saw this with Kaiser White, if he gets a smaller contract than we were all thinking,
right,
then I'd have a bit more questions. But you do improve your run defense, I think, even if coverage drops off a bit. And I think that's a trade-off that they would prefer. You feel a lot better about the secondary and the coverage guys, I think, in this system over the run defense, especially with so many D tackles hurt early on. So, it's a trade-off. And hey, if you go get John Johnson, I think he can play enough of a variety of roles to help with, everything. And then, of course, it's just familiarity. So Ryan Ficken, Jeff Howard, UCLA,
great point.
All these things, hot commodities, the hottest commodities for the Chargers are known commodities. And so I think that was important for them. So again, overall, I feel good about the move. I don't see, you of course you worry about, he hits the wall, he gets injured, overpaying for linebacker, that sort of thing. But I think relative to what they needed and where they were in their current roster and the cap situation, I'm cool with this. I'm excited to watch Eric Kendricks and see what he brings to the table because, we've saw him pick off Justin Herbert, so I know he can do that. That was an unfortunate one on the target too, I believe. Keenan Allen. Yeah, that wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm cool with the move for now. but I'm going to kind of hold off judgment until I see the contract, until I watch more film from him.
Yeah, no, the compensatory pick thing here is certainly important, but that requires Drew Tranquill to go out and sign a bigger contract, right? Like this is, I mean, they could certainly get like a 7th round comp pick for him, but ideally you sign Kendricks with this comp pick formula in mind, and Tranquill's going to go out and sign an $8 million deal. That hasn't happened yet. So, the linebacker spots are really starting to dry up. Somebody reporting too that Denzel Perryman's working out today with the Houston Texans. That's a spot that I think for Drew Tranquill would make a lot of sense. I thought the Giants would make sense. I thought the Steelers make sense, and all these teams are signing other people. So we'll see what happens if he wants to go back to Indianapolis with Gus Bradley. We'll see. I had heard that they wanted to be able to get to a spot that would be able to more maximize his ability as a pass rusher. So that doesn't really line up with what Gus Bradley tends to do. So we'll see what happens on the Drew Tranquill front. Arjun just tweeting Commanders with 3 eye emojis. Oh, gotcha. They did let Holcomb walk today, so that is a potential possibility for Drew Tranquill, is what he's saying. We'll see what happens there. But in terms of Eric Kendricks, I think there are, 2 areas that really kind of stand out for me in terms of like upgrading over Drew Tranquill. I think number 1 is just his ability in zone coverages. I think he's incredibly high IQ and just very consistent at matching routes in zone coverage. And he's so smart at anticipating those windows in which to make plays, right? Like you see him several times a game, win a leverage battle against a tight end over route, or be able to stand out in the red zone and make a play on the football. So I think zone coverage, Kendricks would win out against Drew Tranquill. I think he just has a more natural feel in that regard, and particularly like over the middle of the field. He's somebody that I think it really stands out for him. I do think with Drew Tranquill, you have a better athlete at this point in his career who can really match up one-on-one and line up against guys in man coverage. And I think that's the difference in terms of coverage. So, Kendricks is better in zone. Tranquill's better in man, if you want to, kind of get down to it. I think as run defenders, I don't necessarily agree that Kendricks is a strong upgrade in that regard. I do think he is a more sure-handed tackler. The missed tackle rate for him is fantastic. Tranquill is a bit of a weak point, but he also has less range than Tranquill. I think Tranquill is able to get to more tackles because of his range and athleticism. So again, to me, that's kind of a wash if you're talking about somebody who's a little more sure-handed but doesn't have the range as Eric Kendricks does, or as Drew Tranquill does, excuse me. The biggest difference for Tranquill is his ability as a pass rusher. Drew Tranquill is somebody who has legitimate pass rush chops, and Kendricks can blitz. He can take on a running back. He's not somebody that will go out and win against a guard like we've seen with Drew Tranquill recently. So I hesitate to call this an upgrade. I think this is essentially a lateral move for the Chargers, and I think it's a smart move if again Drew Tranquill is kind of pricing himself out. Pivoting to Eric Kendricks is a very nice consolation prize. I think they're certainly getting an upgrade in terms of high IQ and natural ability at the position. But I do think Drew Tranquill was a very high quality player, and again, we wanted him back as well. So yeah, I'm excited for Eric Kendricks. Probably the best case scenario in terms of pivoting away from Drew Tranquill. So I think this is, again, smart business by the Chargers going from Tranquill to Kendricks, and particularly if they're able to get a comp pick out of it.
Absolutely. I'm now really curious what happens to the rest of the linebacker group, because obviously this is your starter. So that's not a surprise there. This is your starting linebacker. What I think we talked about in January, and what I was told, is that the position that is not retained between Tranquill and Pipkins is going to get a mini overhaul in the same vein of what happened last year with defensive tackle. And we're seeing some of the same patterns. Last year they brought in a lot more defensive tackles. I don't expect that to happen for linebacker, but it's a mini overhaul, and they've fired their position coach. They've now brought in Kendricks, and of course, Trey Pipkins is back. So what are they going to do at linebacker? And what does that mean for their first round pick, or their former first round pick, who just hasn't stuck yet? Obviously he's not going to be the starter. So there's that, but I'm curious, how far will this overhaul potentially go? Again, was told to be a mini overhaul because I guessed it was Trey Pipkins that was going to be the preferred option. That means Tranquill is the guy that was out. Tranquill is out. Kendricks is in. So what does that mean for Kenneth Murray? And really, what does that mean for the draft? I don't think that they're not taking someone in the first round, probably not taking someone in the second round, probably not taking someone in the third round. Give or take. We'll see. I think we ended up taking Williams in the 5th round of our mock draft or 4th round or something.
I think it might have been the 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a solid range. Like that is a very Telesco, Staley friendly sort of range to look at, right? Go find the Kaiser White, go find Drew Tranquill again while you have 2 quote unquote starters ahead. So I'm really curious what happens to this linebacker room, considering we've been hearing that this might be the mini overhaul. And so far it is. They've got a new starter.
Yeah, I would imagine Kenneth Murray takes on some kind of reduced role this year. I do think because you're losing Tranquill, you probably, put Kenneth Murray in more of a sub package blitzer kind of role, and we've seen him, that kind of be his best role and his best option. So, definitely curious to see what they do there. They could still sign Troy Reeder on a minimum contract and have your starting duo be Reeder and Kendricks, and I think you would feel pretty good about that. If they want to draft somebody, that can certainly be a possibility as well. So not a great linebacker class. I think if the Jack Campbell is there in the second round and you take Jack Campbell, then he's probably your starter. But other than that, I think you're probably talking yourself into a developmental, maybe sub-package linebacker later on day 3. And I think that's probably where they should choose anyway, given their needs at other positions. So Dorian Williams, Ivan Pace from Cincinnati. I think that kind of range makes sense for the Chargers on early day 3.
Yeah, I can't wait to not get into this class. And D tackle, which apparently is so good.
Yeah, great D tackle class. All right, so you mentioned Easton Stick earlier. Obviously, Chargers agreeing to keep him around as the main backup, giving him a 1-year, $1.8 million contract. So. Certainly not a high-end backup market quarterback deal for the Chargers. I don't think they really could have afforded one. I figured they'd be in on Cooper Rush, but Justin Herbert and Easton Stick are very close, and I think Easton Stick, is one of Tom Telesco's guys. So the fact that this is another second contract guy for Tom Telesco is really funny to me. But he's definitely QB2. His contract indicates that. Chase Daniel was making $2 million last year. Easton Stick gets $1.8 million this year to be Justin Herbert's backup. Chargers also tendering Foster Sarell, who's down in Texas working out with Duke Manyweather and Rashawn Slater and Trey Pipkins. So smart move on his part. And then also Cameron Dicker gets tendered as well. So those are the 3 smaller internal moves that the Chargers have made. Any thoughts there, Tyler?
I initially was surprised that Sarah was back, but then I realized they brought back Storm Norton last year in the same kind of deal.
Yeah.
So, hey, if he's out there with Duke Manyweather, please don't send me messages that like, well, Trey Pipkins did it, so Foster Sarell can. I'd love for that to happen. Don't get me wrong. I'd love for them to, boom, instantly have a great backup tackle.
That'd be very nice.
We're asking for a lot here from an undrafted free agent. Again, would love to see it, but let's hang in there for a sec. I do think this comes down to that kicker competition that you guys were talking about. People were saying, oh, well, they'll just cut Hopkins. Why haven't they cut Hopkins? You don't know all that much about Cameron Dicker right now.
Yeah.
And neither of these guys hit longer than 50 yards last year. Dicker had 1 shot, and it was in the postseason, and I believe it was exactly 50 yards. Hopkins missed his only 50-yard attempt, I believe. So, you don't really know a lot about both guys. One guy's injured, one guy you don't know about because he hasn't played a ton. Neither of them are big-legged sort of guys. Although on kickoffs, they're great. They just maybe haven't hit or had those opportunities to. So, we'll see what we're in for that competition.
Yeah, that competition is something that, I kind of expected. A lot of people were just penciling in Dustin Hopkins as a cut candidate. If the Chargers designate him as a post June 1 cut, they can certainly save a decent amount of money and get out of the rest of his contract. But I was told pretty early on that they wanted to have a competition between these 2 guys, and that was going to be the plan going forward in the summer. So Daniel Popper threw another potential layer in there earlier today when he talked about Chargers maybe trading one of those 2 for a late day 3 pick for the 2024 draft. And we'll see what happens there if they want to go down that avenue once teams figure out that they need some kicker help. So I think, again, smart business by the Chargers to keep both of these guys around. You hate to see a guy lose his job to injury. And Dustin Hopkins was really good for the Chargers in 2021. And obviously, had the hamstring or the groin injury this year, wasn't able to get back and healthy. So again, the Chargers this is probably their best kicking battle they've ever had. Like, I think you feel really good about both of these kickers, going forward. So we'll see what happens in that regard. But I do expect both of these guys to, make the initial roster cuts, be on the team for training camp, and they'll figure it out probably down to the wire.
Yep. And I have no reservations about who makes it. If someone makes it, another person's cut, you can argue with Ryan Ficken, and I'm not going to. So whoever makes it, we might see certain numbers in training camp. Like, if we tally things up, maybe the other person is a bit better, but Ficken knows what he wants. Technically, Hopkins was the guy they wanted initially. But Dicker was never available. So we'll see. But I'm excited, I guess. And, I might be in training camp this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about kicker battles and actually have it be a good thing for once. Not talking about the Michael Badgley and Tristan Vizcaíno training camp battle, which was atrocious.
Yeah, they were the two good ones. Who's the third guy?
Oh, it was what was his name? He was like,
I forget his name,
agent, wasn't he?
Yeah, someone in the chat knows who the third kicker was in that battle, and it was like, all right, which 60% field goal kicker do you want on your roster? Because these guys are not good in camp. So I'm cool with either.
It was a struggle. But yeah, Ryan Ficken, man, he's an incredible coach. So, Kessman, that was the
Alex
one.
Kessman. Mm-hmm.
Alex Kessman. Shout out to Jorge. Appreciate it. For what it's worth, Daniel Popper did point out that the Chargers do want to bring back J.K. Scott as well. So that is a decision that is TBD, unless LD Bruin is pointing out that happened right now. Are we getting two? We're getting two live signings today.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on.
LD Bruin said punter news ? J.K. Scott coming back. But I haven't seen
I don't know. No idea. I have not seen anything.
Okay. Yeah, I have not seen that either. Okay. So he must have just forgotten a second question there. But yeah, the Chargers do want him to come back. So we'll see what happens there if they want to do an undrafted free agent competition there. But Ryan Ficken is going to get his guys. I think it's pretty clear that if he wants J.K. Scott back, he'll get J.K. Scott back.
Oh, he can do whatever he wants. Like, unrelated, different from certain other coaches. I think if Ryan Ficken wants to do what he wants and he does what he wants, go for it. Who am I to judge? Who am I to say anything? Like, the results are there. That's all it takes. You make moves wherever you want. You bring in your guys and you're top 5, top 6 in the league. Hey, you do whatever you want. I don't care.
I mean, easily the best special teams performance of my entire life last year. So Ryan Ficken can become, associate head coach. You can pay him $10 million a year. I don't care. Like, do whatever you want with Ryan Ficken. I think he deserves it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One other thing here in regards to the offensive line, Daniel Popper did point out as well today, the team still potentially views Jamari Salyer as the swing tackle. So if anything happens to Slater, that's what Popper said. That's what Popper said today.
Sure.
Oh, the Vikings signed a running back. Who did the Vikings sign?
He's not going to be there. Okay. I could see them. If
they brought back Alexander Madison. Okay.
Oh, cool.
That's fine.
2 years, $7 million. So again, market not hot.
No. But yeah, Popper believes that Jamari Salyer is the swing tackle. If that is the case, I would really like to see the Chargers go out and sign a quality interior swing offensive lineman. Obviously Arjun mentioned Evan Brown on our show. He remains unsigned, formerly of the Detroit Lions. There are some other options as well, including Ode Abuji. If they want to do that route, they could do Coleman Shelton, formerly of the Rams. So, there's some quality interior offensive linemen out there that I would really like to see them solidify that backup spot, kind of regardless, but definitely if Jamari Salyer is the swing tackle.
He's not the swing tackle. Okay, if Trey Pipkins gets hurt and they have a backup guard and Salyer then goes to right tackle because they have a backup guard, fine. If that's how you want to, like, he wants to maybe phrase it, then sure.
Yeah.
But no, he's not there. He's going to be their left guard.
I don't think that. I think the team would, like, they have shown that they would rather just make one move than two moves.
Yeah.
And so I think that ultimately you're probably talking about maybe a draft pick and Foster Sorrell as your backup tackles. I don't know. We'll see. I would certainly love. I want them to go out and pay a nice veteran swing, whatever, whether that's an interior offensive lineman or a tackle.
Yeah.
Like, I would like some veteran stability in the backup market, and whether that's bringing back Ode, whether that's Coleman Shelton, Evan Brown. I talked about Cam Fleming, who played for the Cowboys for 2 years. There's also Cam Irving, who played for the Cowboys, and he's played guard, center, and tackle in his career. He's a bit older, though, so I would like to see them be able to get a quality backup veteran at a decent price. So not asking them to go out and break the bank, but certainly would like them to get some backup stability.
At this point, Ode is probably just, if he wants to play, to kind of latching on somewhere. Like, do people consider him a starter? I don't know. We had him on the show, and he was like, "Hey, I want to be back. I love being here." Of course, he's not going to go on the show and be like, "This sucks." But he's got like 3 other teammates with Duke Manyweather. Like, this is a solid line. This team, in theory, is supposed to compete, and there's a working relationship there, and I'd feel good about it. So if Ode is back, I'm all for it. I like him, and he follows me on Twitter, so I'll take it.
There we go. All right, final wrap up here. We didn't necessarily talk about compensation or destinations for a potential Austin Ekeler trade, so that's how we'll wrap up today's show. And then we'll get into some of the things that the Chargers didn't do in terms of like Brandon Fehoko, Donald Parham, all of that stuff on our next show. So really quickly, because we're already over an hour here, what are your thoughts in terms of compensation, potential destinations for Austin Ekeler and a trade?
Well, it's currently not Chicago. I can tell you that. So that's a first source. I don't know why people kept tweeting that, but it's not Chicago.
Can confirm.
Yeah. People are hoping for a lot. It's amazing how much you want to trade away a player that's also somehow worth a first round pick. It's not that. Again, if he's worth that much, well, I guess you should trade him, but maybe keep him. As Arjun said, and when I asked him, I do think it comes down to like a 4th round pick. The Chargers don't have, Austin Ekeler doesn't have a ton of leverage as is, but the Chargers don't exactly have a ton of leverage either. It's not like they can force a certain thing, like, we're not going to trade you here and you have to pick this. Like, no, they're letting him explore. And so I think that Ekeler is going to go to a team and say, hey, here's the deal I want. The team will go, okay, sure. And it's that simple in the NFL. But I think it comes down to a 4th round pick, which is not what a lot of people want to hear, but that's what I think happens. As far as destinations, I mean, I guess the Colts, it has to sort of be the destination I would consider. It would have been the Colts or the Panthers for me, but the Panthers just signed Miles Sanders, so there goes that one. So to me, I guess the Colts, because they have sort of a working relationship. Yes, that's within the AFC, but it's like,
it's not a contender. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is Nick Foles back with the Colts?
No, not yet. They did cut Matt Ryan, so their only quarterback on the roster right now, I think, is Sam Ehlinger.
Nice. Okay, so then just because it's funny, I want them to bring back Nick Foles and go get Austin Ekeler, because Ekeler laughed at the idea of Foles starting the next game after the Chargers whooped him. So just for content, let's go with Austin Ekeler heading to the Colts for a 4th.
That's true. Yeah, no, I think in terms of a potential return, like if the Chargers could, if you tell me they get a 5th and a player, like a young player, I think that I would be very happy with that. I think people are really seeing that the running back market is terrible. And so, you're talking about a player who's about to turn 28, who's asking for a raise. That's not going to be a player who at the running back position is going to fetch a good return for you. So again, if you give me a 5th and a young player, I would love that. Initially, my attention went to the Lions as a team who really likes to run the football, who really has a versatile rushing attack, really likes to use their running backs in the passing game as well. And that's a team in the NFC. They had the cap space, but they just signed David Montgomery. The Panthers just signed Miles Sanders, like you talked about. The Bears signed. The Bears don't have anybody, right? They just have Khalil Herbert.
No, because Williams went to the whatever.
That's right.
Yeah, so just Khalil Herbert for now.
The Saints with Alvin Kamara and their stuff. It's like, okay, maybe that works. Similar system he's been in. They just signed Jamal Williams. So the spots are really drying up. I think, the Commanders would make some sense. There is some schematic overlap there with like what, Eric Bieniemy potentially wants to do and like how Austin Ekeler has been used in the past. With how Shane Steichen used him. You can talk about the Colts too, but then the Colts are going to have Jonathan Taylor and Austin Ekeler. Like, I don't know. So it's just spots are really drying up, man. I think it's going to be really, really tough for Austin Ekeler to go out and find a trade spot. And I think Chargers fans, if it does happen, are going to be disappointed. Like if you send him to the Commanders and you give me a 5th round pick and like De'Ami Brown, that's probably like best case scenario at this point is a nice young player and at a position that you need. Maybe you get a nice speedy receiver. Maybe you get a different running back in return. Like I just, people were like, oh, send him for a 2nd round pick. That's not happening. You're not getting a top 50 pick for Austin Ekeler at this point.
No. Someone in the chat said $25 million for Sanders. I don't see that unless someone else is seeing that. I'm seeing it twice now, so maybe I just missed it. What is that? 6 point. Someone do math. 12 and a half.
That's like 6.25 a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Gross. There's going through the situations, like the potential places he could go. There's really not a lot of connections out there. I don't know. Did Christian McCaffrey have a connection to the night? Oh, Stanford. I'm an idiot. But
I mean, and Christian McCaffrey is like, an elite runner as well as elite pass catcher
for sure. I don't know, man. I really just think the Chargers and Ekeler end up working this out. The worse the market looks, and there's nothing here that looks good, and the fact that the market is kind of drying up. Again, like I said, it takes one team. That's all it takes. But
right.
I think they work this out, man.
So David Newton who covers the Panthers for ESPN, he's the one who tweeted out 4 years, $25 million for Miles Sanders.
Who's paying that for Miles Sanders, by the way? I can't believe he got a 4-year deal.
I would have rather signed it. They could have brought back Deontay Foreman for cheaper than that. And I think Deontay Foreman is a much better fit. But, Deuce Staley's in Carolina now. He was in Philadelphia when they drafted Miles Sanders. Frank Reich obviously was in Philadelphia as well. So makes sense. But 6.25 for him is pretty crazy. Other spots, the Giants don't really have it, and they signed somebody else. I've seen some people have talked about them. There's just not a ton, man. Like maybe you could trade him across town to the Rams, but the Rams have $5 million in cap space right now. So it's not bad. So if you think that they work it out, what kind of contract extension are you thinking at this point? Because I'd be shocked if Austin Ekeler plays on this existing contract this season.
No, I definitely don't think that's the case. I think that, Arjun had a great idea, but now they probably have to tear that out because it's not what they were looking for. I think you could just get him back on the sense that next year is far more guaranteed than it currently is. Because, hey, then he gets 2 years with the Chargers, or he's got a deal and you could also trade him next year or whatever it comes down to. So I think that just amending some of the guarantees next year, which is literally 0, I think you could switch that up. I also think just in general, he gets what would basically be a 1-year extension, which kind of could do the same thing. So you extend him through 2025 and that's it. Because like, do we really expect him to play out this contract? Does Austin Ekeler really expect wherever he goes for him to still be on that team in 2025? I really don't think so. I don't see how you could expect that at all.
Yeah,
that's just not how the extension works. So I think they bring him back. I think they put more guarantees into 2024. I am also the absolute worst person to be asking right now. I should just call Arjun. But yeah, I think the guaranteed next year is nice, and I think that'll help because you
Yeah.
do get money, you do get some stability, you do want to be here. I think they tack on one more year that pretty clearly has an out, and that's it. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the idea that we talked about in our simulations is, you guarantee his contract this year. You essentially give him you do a 2-year contract extension, which really has an out after the 2024 season. That way, you're giving him this year with the signing bonus. You're probably giving him like $10 million, and then next year you make his base salary $9 million. I don't know if that's enough to bridge that gap, because right now they're pretty far apart. So I think the Chargers would have given him at least $1 million raise in terms of his APY. I assume they at least offered him like a $7 million APY extension. Maybe you have to get past 10, maybe like 8.5, 9 is kind of your compromising point at this point.
Yeah, so I'm a complete idiot. He's not under contract next year. I know I kept saying guarantee next year. Guarantee this year. And
I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, I have my years mixed up, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think if like at minimum, you have to fully guarantee this year's contract. Like he has zero guaranteed money on this year's deal. It's all incentive based. Like the Chargers could cut him right away if they wanted to be honest, but I don't think they would do that because they need him. So I think worst case scenario is you do what you did for Melvin Ingram and you fully guarantee his contract this year. You see what happens, but I don't think Austin Ekeler wants that uncertainty for next year. I think he wants to have another deal for next year at minimum.
Fully guaranteed this year, give him a $10 million contract next year, but that shit ain't guaranteed. He's probably cut anyway. I mean, that's kind of how I would see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the Chargers have done business in the past. So it's kind of what they did with Denzel Parham. I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect way to put it.
So I don't know if Austin Ekeler and his camp will go for that, but I can't see him playing on this existing contract. The Chargers are going to have to do something. And, whether or not Austin Ekeler is going to have the fortitude to not play this season, we'll see something else. But if this drags on, like you're talking about a Holden situation, like he's not going to be practicing at training camp if there's nothing done on his contract. So, all right. Jam-packed show today, man. A ton to get to. It was awesome to get the Morgan Fox signing live on the show today. This is a busy time, obviously, for the Chargers. So lots of smart business being done, I think, from the Chargers standpoint, which fans should be happy about. And we'll see what happens from here. I would imagine if you're trying to trade Austin Ekeler, you probably got to do it the next few days, like before everybody else picks up running backs. So, we'll see what happens. If the trade does happen, we'll obviously do an emergency podcast for you guys. Other than that, we'll be going live on Saturday for a Q&A, and then, we'll see what happens after that. So busy time for the Chargers. Lots of smart moves, like I talked about. Tyler, appreciate your time. Everybody in the chat, appreciate you as well today. It's been a fun chat. If you're listening to this, please make sure you leave us a rating and review. We always appreciate that positive feedback from you guys on there as well. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. We will see you next time.